Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. Today our topic is factors influencing aims of education. Point number one. Factor number one, political ideologies. Political ideologies influence aims of education. In the words of Brown, education is any country and all periods reflects value of the ruling classes. Different political ideologies like democratic and tolerism will formulate different aims of education. India has faith in democratic education. Hence, the aim of education has been fixed as the development of democratic view. Russia and China believe in commission as the aim of education. There is development of aims of education progress to the state ideology. It is in fact that the good of the individual likes in his working for the good of the state. Thus she dies for the state. Point number two. Social and economic problems. Sometimes social and economic problems of the country influence the aims of education because people have to adjust to the social and economic standards of the community. According to Secondary Education Commission report as political, social and economic conditions change and new problems arise, it becomes necessary to re-examine and restate clearly the objectives which education at each definite stage should keep in view. Point number three. Prevailing philosophy of life. Aims of education are shaped by prevailing philosophy of life. Prevailing philosophy of life is always reflected in the aims of education. An optimistic philosophy of life gives optimistic aims of education, and philosophy of life lays down aims of education, emphasized self-realization of personality as the aims of education. Philosophy stressed self-expression or self great reflection as the aim of education, and pragmatic philosophy educate formulation and cultivation of dynamic adaptable, resourceful mind as the aim of education. Point number 4. Higher ideals of life. In an ideal and advanced community, ultimate aim of education are influenced by higher ideals of life. Some of the aims of education are education for individual and social development, for culture, for character, for knowledge, sake, and for complete living. All these are ideals and the approach to their aims of idealistic. Point number 5. Religious ideologies. Though there is no state religious in India, yet different religious viewpoints influence the aims of education. The dynamical institutions run by different religious organizations have to work to release the aims accordingly. But human religious occupies the most appropriate place. Therefore, the development of moral and spiritual values has been fixed as one of the important aims of education. Point number 6. Cultural ideology. Cultural heritage of cultural country largely affects the aims of education. The changing and developing pattern of culture directly influence the aims of education. Point number 7. Psychological ideology. Aims of education should be according to needs, interests, abilities, aptitudes, and developmental level of the students. They should be flexible and related to life. Point number 8. Exploration of knowledge. We are living in the age of science and technology. There is almost an exploration of knowledge. Modern education has become science oriented and technology based all over the world. Therefore, exploration of knowledge is as important factor in determining the aims of life of education. Our education must represent their factors and it should be related to the needs and aspirations of the people of Indian society. So the question arises, why different aims of education? Point number 1. Education at different levels. Education is given at different levels and at different stages of life. Each stage, such as the primary, the secondary, the higher, and the adult, has its own needs and characteristics and its own level of development. So each stage has its own aims of education. Point number 2. Different types of education. Different types of education, such as general, technical, and commercial, have different aims of education for themselves. Point number 3. Compulsive complexity of human nature. There is human nature. Human nature is multi-sided. Many evaluates make up a man. An individual has many aspects: physical, intellectual, social, moral, and spiritual. Emphasis on the one or the other leads to different interpretations. Point number 4. Complexity of human evaluation. Point number 4. Complexity of human environment. There is complexity of human environment, different types of environment, that means physical, intellectual, social, and cultural, give birth to different aims of education. Point number 5. Different ideals of life. Different philosophers have emphasized different ideals of life. They have given rise to different aims of education. So, in next lecture, we will study about individual's aim of education in detail. Thank you.